once again, I'm Samantha. This is Kylie over here. If you haven't met us yet, I'm Samantha. I live in Sobieski, and I absolutely love space and drawing and animals and stuff. And why I love space is partially why I'm in this class. So tonight we'll be presenting to you one of the first missions into space. We're going to be going a little bit back in time again to some of the first missions in space, even before we got humans into space. So, there we go. One that I'm going to be talking about is Luna 2, which launched September 12th, 1959 in our time. Truthfully, it launched like September 13th in Russia, but that's just going to make things a whole lot more confusing, so we're just going to keep it in our time. So, if you can't tell, Luna 2 was a Russian rocket. It was made by the Russians because they got everything first except the moon landing. And so it launched September 12th, and one of the things that it had many missions that it had to do, but one of them was testing how gas reacted in space. So what it did was, on its way to the moon, it released a cloud of sodium gas just to see how does it react, is it any different than on Earth? And really it isn't. It clumps together a little more because gravity, and they're technically like little dust particles and stuff, so it clumps together a little more, but essentially it acts kind of the same as it does on our Earth. But it's a good thing we discovered that, because we're going to use oxygen and hydrogen in our rockets and stuff. So another thing that it did test as it was being sent off to the moon was if our moon had a magnetic field of any sort and if it had a radiation belt for future missions. Because if it had a magnetic field or radiation belt or any of that stuff, that would drastically change our missions. Because, well, radiation, we're going to have to fix all of our suits and everything just to be like, okay, we gotta be radiant resistant, And the magnetic field is just gonna make landing on the moon a little bit harder. So, after flying for 33.4 hours straight, radio signals from Luna 2 abruptly ceased. And as for why they ceased, I'm using this pencil as an example for tonight. You'll see in the second slide, I believe. It's because at the time, we didn't really know how to land anything. We just kind of knew how to launch it and watch it crash, That's all we knew how to do. I'm going to grab that real quick. So it crashed into the moon, and we don't really know exactly where it crashed, but we believe it was around right here, this little tiny dot right there. So yeah, that's Luna 2, and that's what it looked like. So the next mission after that, well, a couple years after that, was the Luna 9 mission, which was launched January 31st, 1966, once again in our time. And it was the first soft landing on a world beyond Earth, and as well the first pictures of the moon. But first of all, what is a soft landing? Well, as you saw, I just chucked my pencil and just watched it fall and crash into the floor. What a soft landing is you launch something, but then it nice and calmly lands on something. There's no crashing, no anything, just the least amount of crashing possible. And Luna 9 achieved the first ever soft landing on not Earth, essentially. So we've learned how to do soft landings from Luna 9, but as well as it got the first pictures of the moon. So here, it took 7 pictures, I believe. Here you can see some of its more famous pictures, panoramic pictures. Little selfie right there. And then keeps going and going. And it was really incredible to see the first pictures of the moon ever. Because before now, we just got to see distant pictures from Earth. But now we're on the moon, we get to see what it actually looks like. So now, the first images of Luna 9 arrived early in the morning, fun little fact. Oh, and also this is one of its most famous pictures that it did take. And the reason why it's so famous is because it shows how rocky the surface of the moon really is compared to what we thought it was before. So you can see it's pretty rocky, it's like dust and rocks essentially, so. But, a little fun fact, the first images sent by Luna 9 arrived early in the morning for Russians. It was around 3 in the morning for them. So when the pictures arrived, the space program didn't really know what to do because they didn't want to wake up their boss. Because who wants to wake up their boss at 3 in the morning just to be like, hey, we got some pictures here you want to see? So they didn't want to wake up their boss at all, so instead of waking anyone up, they sent the pictures off to British media, which is incredible considering that the whole space race going on in Russia didn't like anyone, pretty much. But no, they just sent the pictures off to the British media to publish them officially. And February 9th, 1966 was the last communications we had with Luna 9, just a couple days after it landed on the moon. So now, finally, something for the Americans. It wasn't the first, of course, but you know, it's something for the Americans at least. So Surveyor 1 was launched May 30th, 1966, and for us Americans, it was the first soft landing on the moon. So of course, soft landing, just land on the moon, no crashing, no anything, everything's stable. And it also brought back our own first pictures from the moon, and while it was on the moon, it actually took over 10,000 pictures of the moon. So I'm sure we set a record there compared to their 7 pictures they took, but I'm not going to show you all 10,000 pictures, because that's a lot of pictures. So here's just a couple of the more famous ones. There's a little crater, a little shadow selfie, and here's some more pictures of its surface and how rocky it can truly be. And all those pictures and all the data collected was used for future missions, like how are we going to land on the moon, what's the moon really like, stuff like that. It was essential for us ourselves to know how are we going to get on the moon, because Russia wasn't going to share any of their information. And finally, after 7 months of continuously sending pictures and data back to us, on January 7th, 1967, we lost connection with Surveyor 1, which is a lot longer than Luna 9 lasted. We have that at least. We know how to make our machines last, but Russia kind of got to it first. That's okay.
And so I had Zond 5, and Zond means probe in Russian. It launched September 14th, 1968, and it was the second to orbit the moon, but it was the first to land safely on Earth. It also was the first to carry terrestrial organisms such as tortoises, fruit fly eggs, plants, and bacteria. And so basically it was just a test pod to see how different living organisms would react to space and gravity in space. And here's a little picture that showed what it looked like. And then here is a picture of when it landed in the moon. Surprisingly, the tortoises lived through the mission, but they were severely malnourished.
So that's a picture of it in the ocean.
Yes, that's a picture of it landing in the ocean.
Yeah. So they orbited the moon and came back to Earth, is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
In 1968?
Yes.
Yes?
Well, sort of, I
Yeah,
think, yeah.
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 No, I'm just, that's crazy to me.
Mhm.
So did the fruit flies live?
I believe the fruit flies died because fruit flies have such a small
Sure.
window of living, so they
No,
didn't live.
I didn't think anything from
No, fruit flies have such a small window of
Should've left
living.
all
I
back
think
in
it's
the
about like
house.
2 to 3 days,
that. Okay.
so they
They
died.
just reproduce like crazy.
Should have left the banana out there.
Yeah, perfect.
And so this is the Nakad, and it's Moonwalker in Russian. It launched the 10th of November 1970, and its last contact with the Russians was September 14th, 1971. It is the first Soviet rover on the moon, but it's also the first rover anywhere, especially the moon. And it traveled 6.5 miles during its time that it was alive. And basically its job was to take pictures of the moon, and it also took soil samples of the moon to see what it was made of, what consistency it was, like if it was a severely hard rock or if it crumbled and stuff like that. And that is a recreation of the rover in the museum. And so here are some of the pictures it took, and it just also showed how rocky the surface of the moon was, and just how malleable the rocks were because of how deep the tracks were. And then right here is the final site of when it lost contact with the Russians.
It did a donut.
And this was in 1970?
Yes, 1970 to 1971.
excited then.
So is all that stuff still sitting up there?
Contracts,
No,
Road.
the equipment.
no, we're still there,
Luna 2 and 9 are still up there, yeah.
Amazing.
yes.
Okay, so when they sent the tortoises up, like what part of the ship did they keep the tortoises in? Was it just that tiny ball that they had in the ocean? Was
Yes.
it just that piece of it?
Yep.
That's tiny.
Yeah,
Well,
it's just
it
a little
was-
pressurized.
Yeah,
Caps.
it was big enough for the tortoises to actually be in, but it was small enough to where it didn't go over their budget of building an actual ship, launching it and stuff.
How long was it actually up there?
I believe it just orbited once around the Earth and then came back,
Once around the moon.
or around the moon, yes, sorry.
So it's a 2-day trip there, 2-day trip back.
About a week then.
And then to retrieve the actual pod, they had to search through the ocean.
Poor turtle.
So do we have any idea what happened or any special thing happened in 1870?
And I don't believe so.
So 100 years later, we did this? Be kind of curious to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think now we're planning on going back to the moon to eventually send our rockets to Mars too.
Mhm.